Okay, Nick, I think this is going to be a fun one. This is going to be the fun episode. Not that our episodes are not usually fun. They're actually sometimes too much fun.
I was going to say, Anastasia, like, what do you want about? Like, well, it's always fun recording. Like, I find it fun watching you collapse on the floor in laughter, which is what happened at the end of our last recording. So, for a little behind the scenes knowledge, right, we were planning on recording this episode and our last episode on the same day. However, the ending of the last episode, Anastasia was slowly starting to go a bit crazy, as proved by the fact she found something I said way funnier than it actually was. And as a result, we decided that maybe it was better to reconvene on the following day, which is Monday, November the 25th.
Yes. So we're here, take 2, even though we didn't really do take 1, but I definitely was a bit loopy yesterday. Hope you listened to our last episode. It was a little bit chaotic, but a little bit fun. And yeah.
Those of us who've mentioned my mic issues, like, you probably are hoping that we don't do take 2s, but these episodes recordings take a long time. We are trying to fix it, by the way.
Yes, we are trying to fix the mic issues. You can blame Anastasia because I'm not a techno wizard yet, but I'm getting there, and we're gonna figure it out together, Nick.
I had to ask Anastasia earlier what she was talking about when she said gain on a mic, and I was like, I have no idea what she's on about.
I am learning so much about audio editing, guys, and just a little bit behind the scenes, because I don't know how much people know about this stuff, but it's Nick and I. Like, that's the podcast's production team. It's Nick and I talking back and forth, me looking on YouTube for videos of how to fix mics, but that's just a little bit behind the scenes for you. But anywho, let's get into this episode of Ground Pass. The off season is here. People are on beaches in the Maldives. Why do all tennis players go to the Maldives? I think it is a promotion thing, but who knows? But either way, it's the off season. We're here to have fun, and we have a fun episode here for you, which is going to be the Ground Pass 2024 season in review. We're going to look back on the season. We have certain categories that we're going to go through. And yeah, I'm excited to hear Nick's answers. I don't know them. We have like a shared document, and he's put some of his answers in, but some of them he hasn't. So I'm going to be surprised to hear what he thinks.
The answers I haven't filled in are answers I hadn't decided when we were prepping the podcast. And although I do have some answers now, there may be 1 or 2 things I have to think of might decide having to during the episode, because I'm between 2 things.
And sometimes you need that. Sometimes you need the pressure to just be like, pick one. Anyway, are you ready, Nick?
Do you have any awards show music, by the way?
Cue the Oscar theme song here. Okay, here we go. So first category, favorite tournament attended in person. Now, I personally actually don't think this is fair, because Nick didn't attend a lot of tournaments this year. I attended a few tournaments this year. So I will let you go first, Nick, because it's not really a fair question.
I only attended 1 tournament this year.
Yes.
And even if it wasn't, it would still be my favourite, and that's Wimbledon. And look, no offence, like, I've done the Birmingham 250 before a few times. It's really, and it's quite a nice sort of low, not low, kind of low key vibe to it. With Wimbledon, like, it's just this sort of, I just think of it as like this magical tennis place, really.
Yeah.
That, like, you get covered in the other side world and everything is all about tennis. And I think Anastasia's choice sounds very similar to that kind of vibe.
Yep.
It's a bit of a spoiler, but or a hint, as it were. But for me, I don't think many tournaments could beat it, even if I did go to 2 others. And also, let's face it, this year with the trip that I had, especially that centre court day that I had, I don't think anything will ever top that as a tennis day for me. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, maybe you've joined us in the last sort of few months or so, go back and listen to my kind of audio diaries of when I visited Wimbledon this year. I did actually have to listen back to it to try and work out some of my answers to these categories. So that helped a lot. So I was like, great memories. Yeah, Wimbledon, for sure.
Isn't that great that we can like look back at old episodes and remember, and you're like, oh, that was a great tournament, or that was a great memory. So I will link those episodes below so you can go back and listen to it. But I think you had a really great experience just listening back to your voice memos that you sent in.
Absolutely. So Anastasia, how many tournaments did you go to this year?
Okay, so let's see. Let's start from the beginning of the year into it, but I went to Indian Wells, I went to Miami, I went to Cincinnati, and I went to the US Open, and then I went to the Challenger in Champaign. So that's 5 tournaments. That's the most I've ever gone to ever. I live in New York, so I go to the US Open every year. It's just kind of the tradition I have. But yeah, it was a big year for tournaments for me. My favorite, actually, before this summer, I thought I knew what my favorite was going to be, hands down. But one tournament kind of made me rethink because I was so surprised by how much I loved it. So really close second for me was Cincinnati. I was really surprised by how much I loved that venue, the vibe. You know, it was just a smaller US Open. It was kind of remarkable how it got that feeling, but hands down, number one is Indian Wells. Indian Wells was my favorite tournament to attend in person this year. And like Nick said with Wimbledon, to me, it just seems like a magical place. Like, it just seems like there's this magical secret tennis tournament surrounded by mountains in the desert where everything's perfect and the weather is perfect every day. Like, it was kind of surreal and the sunsets were all sorts of colors of pink, and then there was tennis being played. It was a really magical moment, I think. And even the same thing, I remember we did an episode, I think it was one of my last days there, if not my last day there, where I recorded from the venue with you. And yeah, listening back to that episode, it was just, I was on a high. I was on a happy tennis high. So Indian Wells stole my heart, and I live across the country from it. It is not easy or cheap to go to. So it's going to be really tough trying to make tennis tournament decisions when Indian Wells exists. And you're like, I just want to go again.
No, I know how it means. And like, no, realistically, I don't think I can go to Wimbledon every year. I have plans to in 2025, but probably not for as long as I did this time. You can't go to the same event every single time, every single year, but you can always make plans for going fairly regularly. And
yeah,
Indian Wells is the tournament, like ever since Anastasia has been there and told me all about it. And now it's the tournament that I most want to visit that's outside the UK ahead of any of the Grand Slams, because I feel like it's a nice, comfortable tournament for tennis fans.
Yeah,
that kind of vibe that I'm going for with it. So yeah, I think wholeheartedly can understand that decision that you've made.
Yeah. And, based on those lines, like, stay tuned, because I think the more Nick and I go to different tournaments and stuff, it would be really nice to sort of, give you mini tournament guides in written form that you can go back to and look to see if you want to visit. I still think the blog post, I guess, that Nick wrote for Wimbledon for the ticket ballot, like, it's still some of the best written stuff. I mean, I'm going to also link it below, because when you sent me that draft, I was like, oh my goodness, you put so much work into it, and I think everyone should read it. But we'll put a link to that. It's on our website, and there'll be more tournament guides and things coming your way there. Next, the next one. We can't go to all the tournaments. We wish we could, but we can't go to all the tournaments. So, favorite tournament to watch on TV. I will say for me, it was the United Cup. This was the first year I'd ever watched the United Cup from start to finish. And I mean, granted, it was really tough. Luckily, I wasn't working at the time because I live on the East Coast of the United States and the time zone to Australia is not easy. But the United Cup was so fun. And I think it just started my whole really new love for tennis team events. It is an individual sport. I get it. But I love these team events. I love watching tennis players that usually are used to just working on their own craft and solo endeavors now try to work within a team, and seeing those team dynamics and seeing them really fight hard to like get the win in those team dynamics. And the United Cup was so great. Like just on TV, the graphics were great. Like they had these, so each team had like a little kind of, I don't even, like a bench, a box where they all were, which was just on the side of the court, and the cameras would go in there and like, you know, interview the coaches or other players or things like that. So it was actually a really fun, interactive tournament to watch. Really, I know it's out of, you know, it's not a Grand Slam, but it was a lot of fun watching United Cup, and I'm actually really excited to see it again this year.
It's interesting with the United Cup because Talking Tennis, which is another sort of tennis streaming podcast, a kind of outlet that sort of is out there. Anastasia and I have been involved with it before.
Yeah.
Like they put out a poll on Twitter asking which is your favourite team event? And they put Davis Cup, Billie Jean King Cup, United Cup, or Please State, or like none of them. Like I can't remember what the fourth option was. I went with United Cup because United Cup I think is like the most fun event, and like I always feel like watching United Cup is like a mini slam. You know, you could say it's not a Grand Slam, but like the matches come so thick and fast, and they've got so many top players involved. And it's in kind of these biggish stadiums, or if they feel big on TV, as compared to a lot of what end up happening at Billie Jean Cup and Davis Cup, which is crammed into like an arena somewhere, like a smaller indoor arena. Like this felt like a tennis, like a proper Australian Open warm up, which is one of the reasons why I like it so much. It's worth points, has men and women in it. For me, it ticks all the boxes for what I would want from a team event, much more so than anywhere else. And that sort of fast frenetic nature, and there's like so many top players in action. Yeah, I think it is my favourite team event overall, and I always enjoy watching it every year, so I can completely understand why you would pick that event, Anastasia.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I actually saw your answer to this question, and I'm interested to know why.
Yeah, so here's the thing, right? Because I found this question really, really hard, because I have nitpicks with every single tournament that I watch. Like, you know, I can kind of get an idea of like what a nice vibe is, what kind of thing they're going for. I feel like trying to feel like a feel from a tournament is difficult if you're going for something. Like, I didn't feel like I could go for Wimbledon again, because that would be the obvious answer. That would be that Wimbledon's the tournament I put my life on hold for. And it's the tournament that has been on the TV pretty much my entire life growing up. Like, I think I have memories of being very, very small and the tennis being on, and I have no idea what's going on other than, oh, look, people dressed in white on a field.
On a field.
Think about how big a tennis court would be to a 2-year-old.
Yes.
And but like Wimbledon would just win every time, so it's not particularly interesting if I go for it. So I can't say it. I'm going to have to like exempt Wimbledon from it. So it's like, well, which one do I go for? And there's a few other British grass court ones I quite like in watching and whatnot. But for me, I really enjoy watching the Stuttgart Open. And there's a reason for that, right? First of all, it feels like a secondary WTA finals because you've got pretty much, it's a 500 event, it lasts for a week. There's only like 32 players in the draw, but pretty much all the top 10 show up. Plus, they give wild cards to crazy good people. Like they gave wild cards to Emma Raducanu and Angelique Kerber, like Grand Slam. Like they just cram it with the best of the WTA, and they're playing all day on a quick indoor clay court, quickish, slick indoor clay court. I think the vibe of the venue is like, you know, it's really cool the way it's kind of lit and everything. And so, yeah, I just love the vibe of like, it feels like the WTA finals, but bigger in some ways. Like, I love the WTA finals. I love the end of year finals. They're some of my favorite tournaments. But the other thing I really liked was the Stuttgart event this year. I think half the matches that got played were really good matches. They were really entertaining. They were competitive. I think I ended up with like, I think there were like 13 memorable matches out of a possible, 30 something.
Yeah.
For me, yeah, Stuttgart is the top. The one thing I would fix, please fix the graphics for the tournament. Like, not the WTA graphics, just like the tournament, like the tournament graphics they use on site, because they haven't, I think they've been using the same ones for a few years now, and I don't think they've aged particularly well. The cars look cool.
Right. Well, I was just going to say, they have a great prize at the end of that tournament. I think I remember us recording the episode and I was like, I'll take the Porsche. I will just give me the car. It's okay. I will put on my clay court shoes and attempt to win that tournament if I get the car at the end. But no, that's a really good one. That's a really, really good one. There were so many great matches this year from the Stuttgart. I can't remember what Emma Raducanu was doing. Then Marta Kostyuk also had a really good tournament at Stuttgart this year. So yeah, that was a good tournament. Next one. This is okay. Now we're getting spicy. Now we're getting interesting. Favorite match you watched on TV? You have like a list of 200.
Yeah, do you saw my messages about like my. Yeah, so for those who may not have seen my social media, I decided to share this with the world. So I was going to work on a project, like beginning of the year, decided, you know what, I'm gonna see what matches are get the most attention on social media. I'm going to make a list of them. They're going to be matches that I also enjoyed, but like, you know, the matches I thought got the most buzz. And I had a spreadsheet for ATP and a spreadsheet for WTA. And then I was going to do an end of year like best matches for WTA. The WTA spreadsheet ended up having 125 matches on it. Now, I will say not all of them I watched. I didn't actually watch all of them. Some of them were like, happened overnight, so I slept through it. So an example would be Sabalenka Stearns at Indian Wells. That was a night session match. I didn't watch it. It was beyond my time zone. But I woke up to loads of people on Twitter going crazy for it, so I added it to the list. So I was like, okay, well then, which one of these did I watch? Which one of these did I not like? Which ones do I go for? And like, I can pick holes. Like, do I really want to pick holes in it? Like, I don't. And like, I really enjoyed all of these. Like, I don't have to pick one. The one I ended up going with was probably not a very ground passy match. That it was near the end of a tournament, but I'm actually going with the Wimbledon semi-final between Jasmine Paolini and Donna Vekic.
That was a good one. Oh, that was a good one. Good picnic.
Yeah. And like, other people shouting at me going like, what, people who are hardcore tennis fans are going, but why haven't you gone for one of the two matches that we know is like one of the best ones of the year? Like, because I didn't watch them all the way through. And also, actually, no, I did go back and watch them both, but I didn't watch them live all the way through because I had distractions with life. But also when I was watching them live and I was watching the ends of those matches, it was stressed out my mind. So, because they both involved Iga Swiatek. So, yeah, I'm going with something that, like, it was a good match. And I knew it was a good match because I couldn't pay full attention to it. It was, so it was kind of on the background when I had to do other things. But what I was watching, I thought, oh, this is really, really good. Like, even though I wasn't paying full attention, I knew there was something special going on. And then by the time I was able to pay attention to it, specifically in the final set, I was gripped all the way through. So And I don't think any other match really had that effect on me this year. So for that reason, I am going to go with Donna Vekic against Jasmine Paolini in that Wimbledon semi-final.
I love that pick because I think you're right. People would probably think you would go for Iga Naomi Osaka at the French Open or Iga and Arina Sabalenka in Madrid.
Yes.
Those were also two phenomenal matches that I think I would have picked. But I actually think you made the better pick. That match between Donna Vekic and Jasmine Paolini was so emotionally gripping, because both had so much on the line. That's a great match. That was a very, very, very good match.
You actually went for a proper grounds pass pick, though. You actually went for a proper, in the spirit of the show kind of thing.
I did. But also, for me, a tennis match is a tennis match is a tennis match. There are a lot of great tennis matches that I could name that were super, really good this year. But there's something...
My ATP list was 80 matches.
Yeah. There were definitely more, I will give it that. There were definitely more WTA matches this year that caught my attention, which for me is rare. But I think I've definitely successfully converted my
I'm not necessarily doing this as a comparison, but just to kind of back your point up of again, you had a similar problem. Trying to sift through 80 matches is ridiculous.
It is totally ridiculous, but I do still think there are the WTA storylines this year were epic. But anywho, different podcast. The matches I remember the most are the matches where there is crowd participation. There is something about watching a tennis match at home that almost makes you want to be there when the crowd is just going crazy. And I picked the match between David Goffin and Giovanni Mpessi-Perricard, which was the first round match at the French Open this year. And boy, were the crowd involved. They were the best crowds, I think. French crowd they're a different level. You watch a French tournament and it is a different level of fan, and they're so riled up and so in it with everything. And they made that match for me one of the most memorable. And, Giovanni Mpessi-Perricard is a new person coming up this year. I technically started watching him at the end of last year during the indoor season, but he was coming into this event. He had just won Lyon, really high in everything. David Goffin, nobody was, I think, going for him really. And I think he almost used that as motivation. This was a 5-set match. It was forever and a half long, but it was a fun time just being part of it. And I love that note you said about you were looking at matches that also sparked conversation on social media. So many people were talking about this match as it was going on, which sometimes I love participating in. So that was my match that I loved watching this year. It was definitely a scene. Okay. Next, favorite match you watched in person on an outside court. So I'll say that again. So this has to be a match that you watched in person on an outside court, hence probably with a ground pass. See what we're doing. Got to stick with the branding. Do you want to go first with this, or do you still want to think about it?
Oh, I know my answer.
What is it?
God, but I didn't write it down, did I? No, I do have it on the thing. So I watched quite a few fun matches at Wimbledon this year on outside courts, but I think the one that kind of I noticed that I felt I enjoyed the most was Lena Svitolina against Magdalena at Wimbledon. Now, obviously, I'm going for a WTA match. By the way, I think the other ones up there, I enjoyed watching Paula Badosa, Brenda Kvitova. I enjoyed watching Linda Noskova and Bianca Andreescu as well. What was it? On the outside courts. I don't think court 2 counts as an outside court. I'm not
is that sort of
those matches.
Is that after? So remind me, it's center 1 and then 2. So 2 doesn't have a roof.
2 is the equivalent of grandstand.
Okay.
So I don't think you wouldn't count grandstand as an outside court, would you?
Not
The
really.
US Open. No, so I'm not going to.
Not really.
So yeah, I think Svitolina Lynette, one, crowd participation. There were some very passionate Polish fans. There were some very passionate Ukrainian fans going on there. I think it was one of the few matches I actually watched that went 3 sets, if I remember right. But like both players were giving it everything they could. It was a great tussle between the two of them, and like something else, I think one particular memory I have of that match, I think it's probably like coloured it a little bit for me, was what first of all I sat in the rain for 2 hours waiting for that match, so it had to be worth it.
Yeah.
But
you're
also,
like, this better be good.
There was a family in front of me, and it was a family day out to Wimbledon with mum and dad and their kids. I think the dad was Ukrainian. I don't know what nationality the mum was, but I knew that it was different. And they had court 1 tickets, and so mum and dad were kind of swapping which kid they had with them at which match.
Ah.
But the sort of little girl in front of me, who probably I'm going to say is about at least 5 or 6, she was there, and she was with her dad, who was there to support Elina Svitolina, and she had her little Ukrainian flag, and she was waving it when everyone was cheering, or she was waving it when she thought she needed to wave it, which probably wasn't at the right time, because she was still figuring out how tennis worked.
Yeah.
She still didn't fully understand like the point system, like her brother was explaining to her, dad was explaining it to her. But she was into the atmosphere. She was having a good time, and it was nice being behind someone who was sort of hopefully getting into tennis at some point, getting into tennis. But the match itself was also really, really competitive. But I think being in that atmosphere with all the fans around was really, really nice. That's what I'm going with.
Yeah, I love that. I love when you almost see the birthing of a tennis fan. Like, it's actually cute when you see it in person.
I will be honest, that little girl did fall asleep or start falling asleep after a set, because she'd been in the queue since whatever time in the morning. So, and
probably sitting in the rain and all that. Yeah,
like she was enjoying it, but she was very, very tired.
I can imagine. So for me, and I really did go back and think about it, and I was like, am I just picking this match because it's Andy Murray? But no, this was a match. My favorite match to watch in person on an outside court was Andy Murray. I know, on an outside court, but that's what you get when you go to smaller tournaments. And technically, this was at the Miami Open, which is a 1,000 level event. But at 1,000 level events, there are just so many players that they have to cater to. Not everyone's going to get on the show court or one of the other bigger ones. And he was on, one of, like the 4th biggest court, basically. And it was Andy Murray and Thomas Mahak. And I mean, first of all, we know how I feel about Tomas and his short shorts and his perfect fashion sense. Those are the correct length of shorts, Tomas. Keep it up. And Andy Murray, it was back when we were still in the sort of will he, won't he retire? And, no one was really knowing what was going on. But he had all of a sudden was having such a great run at the Miami Open. And all of a sudden the chatter had started was, could Andy Murray win the Miami Open? It's a tournament he actually loves. And I'm lucky to have seen him play in person before, so it really wasn't about that. But I was caught up in the sort of, will he, won't he might win this tournament. I love Thomas Mahach, who was also having a great tournament on his end. So it was just the perfect combination of storyline, good tennis, and the crowd was insane. Like, the crowd was insane. And I had such a good time watching that. But it was also so crushing, because if everyone remembers, that was also the tennis match where I think Andy just stepped wrong. I think he just stepped wrong because there wasn't really or anything, but he hurt his ankle and put him out for a while. And he never really came back to that level this year, and then ended up retiring at Wimbledon. So I was very happy to be in the crowd for that. It was one of my favorite moments of attending a tournament in person this year.
Joyce, yeah, I think, yeah, you've got to pick an epic moment where, you know, you almost saw the last big battle of Andy Murray's singles career where that's a lie. I think there was one at Queen's Club. I think he certainly seeing Andy Murray putting everything out there against a young and hungry player. At this stage, like that was the kind of performances that he's been putting in that's kept his fans kind of invested in him. Absolutely, what makes him so fun to watch and makes that World at Wonday even more intriguing. So yeah, I think I would have liked to have been there with you. To be honest, that would have been a fantastic match to watch up until when he rolled his ankle.
That was so soul crushing. And one day, Nick and I are gonna meet up one day at a tournament near somewhere. We'll see. Maybe when you get over to Indian Wells, or maybe when I get over to Wimbledon, one of these times. Anyway, next, this was an odd one because I had a lot of choices, but I kind of restricted it a little bit, which made it harder for me to do. But our next question is, who was your favorite player, your favorite new player this year? And I restricted it to the 2024 season in the sense that you discovered this person in the 2024 season. So that restricted a lot of things for me because I was at first going to say Giovanni Mempesci Pericard only because he's just a marvel. He is so tall. I have also watched him in person. I cannot explain to you how tall he is, but he is so tall. So he's a marvel. But I did start watching him in 2023. So I went back into the archives and I was like, who else have I been watching that I'm really excited by that I only discovered this year? And it has to be Jacob Fernley. Jacob Fernley was the one. I had never heard of him before his match against Novak Djokovic at Wimbledon. And I was so impressed by his gumption. Gumption's the only word I can think for it. He just stepped onto that center court and didn't care who was across the net. Like, he's given interviews since that I've listened to where he actually does, care. He loves Novak or whatever, but he was just so laser focused on winning a tennis match. And I appreciated that so much. And I do love the way he plays. I thought it was really great. So I made it a point to follow him, especially he also went to college in the States. So college players coming out of the college tennis, programs from the States have been sort of highlighted this year a lot. And then I just watched him go on a run of French challengers. I think he won every French challenger he played, which was so odd. I was like, he's a Brit. He's winning all these challenges in France. Very odd, but he's had a really great run to this year. And, now he's going pro. So I'll be very interested to see how he does in the future. But he was my favorite new find this year, Jacob Fernley. How about you?
I've trouble with this one because I'd heard of everyone that I watched this year, more or less.
Yeah.
So, I think
I just have to say, that's why this question is really hard for us. It might not be hard for our audience, but we are so into tennis. So we hear about people all the time.
I watched Emma Navarro for the first time this year, but I'd been hearing all about her since the end of last year. And obviously now she's top 10, so I kind of had to watch her. So, and I was going through the rankings going, I kind of seen them play, or there wasn't anything about the way that they played that kind of particularly gripped me at the gate of okay, I think the one player maybe, I will say this. Do you know what? I'm gonna change my answer because I was gonna cheat, but actually there is one player I think I'm gonna go with. Okay. And the only reason why I wasn't originally going to go with her is because if she kind of continues down the line, I don't necessarily know if she'll be one of my ultimate favourites to watch, but I will still have a lot of admiration for her. Mm-hmm. Just because I like watching something that's a bit more inventive and a bit more kind of smooth. And
Who is it?
Very young player. Jovic, who is an
Okay.
American,
Yeah.
16 years old. I hadn't heard of her. She got a US Open wildcard, and I watched it. And my initial her match, I can't remember who she was playing. She was playing a really experienced player, and she was giving it all. I think I mean Kasatkina or someone like that.
Yeah, I don't remember, but I think we either briefly mentioned her or I also did watch her. But did she also play the junior tournament at the US Open?
I think she did, yeah, because she got to the semis, I think, or
Yeah.
she quite well in the juniors. And the thing that kind of gripped me about her was I did not think a 16-year-old could hit the ball that hard. I didn't think someone that young would be physically capable of hitting the ball hard as someone who's been on the tour for 10 years.
Yeah.
Who's maybe matured a little bit more physically, and has been working on it specifically. I just remember watching her going, oh goodness, that just raw power is insane. And she's not even, she's very slightly built as well. So the fact that she kind of got away with that and that she could achieve that is really impressive. So, and the fact that she just kept on fighting, locking in, and a bit like with Jacob Ferdinand, and I was like, no, I'm not backing down, I'm not losing, I'm going to go toe to toe with you and I'm going to give everything.
Yeah.
I don't think she didn't win the match in the end, but she made it pretty fun and competitive. And so, yeah, I reckon I've got to go with Eva Jovic, just because she best fits your description, really. It may well be in future years of Ground Pass that we're just going to end up picking teenagers this award.
Exactly. It's like someone in, playing an ITF that we watched on a stream somewhere. But yeah, no, this was a hard one for us because we do watch a lot of tennis and we're just in the tennis world. So I think we just hear about tennis players a lot more. But I think the great thing about mentioning these players is that someone listening can then discover them, because I think those two players that we just mentioned are definitely worth a watch next year for sure. Okay, this is a fun one because it's always something where you see a player and you're like, they're going to be the best player of the world, they're going to win every Grand Slam, and then they just disappear and you never hear from them ever again. Player you thought would be great but disappeared. Dino Prismic. Why? Also, I don't know why I'm picking people who played Novak Djokovic in early rounds of Grand Slams, but Dino did really, really well. Dino is a Croatian player. He was, and to his credit, by the way, the reason he disappeared is because he has been injured. And during that first match against Novak Djokovic, I mean, his arm was taped, his leg was taped, which was really funny because I remember putting on that match and thinking, as they walked out and they were doing their warm-ups, I was like, this is going to be really quick. This kid looks really injured and is probably not going to survive. But Dino Prismic, that match was, I have never seen anyone take on Novak like that who wasn't sort of already a top player. Like, he came out of nowhere and was like, I'm going to win this match. And I think everyone was like, what do you mean? And he was like, look, I'm going to win this match. I think it was a 4-set match. He did take one of the sets that went to a tiebreak. But yeah, he won that match. It was, I can't remember what round, but it was one of the early rounds of the Australian Open, maybe the first or second round of the Australian Open. And I think he was in a tournament, the very next tournament after the Australian Open, he was in it. And then I just truly have not seen him all year. He just disappeared. And then I later, I did my research because I was like, where's Dino? Where is he? And, he's been injured for a long time, hoping he comes back in 2025. But he is my pick for player I thought would be great. But then, poof, disappeared.
And Dino's young enough that he could still be great because he's still 19, right? I think he's just turned 19. He would have been 18 when he played Novak. It just depends on how he manages injuries kind of going forward. So I completely understand why you would say that, and that's the risk with sometimes like going big on a young player is they get injured in their development massively impacts how they do, which is what's happened with my pick.
It's a theme.
Yeah, and I think, again, it's going to be one of those things that keeps cropping up. My pick is Brenda Kvitova.
Yeah, also, another great player. Yeah.
And I feel a little bit bad about this one because she's only 17.
Yeah.
Her career's barely started. So Brenda's had a lot of hype. I remember watching her WTA Tour debut as a 14-year-old. Would have been 2 or 3 years ago against Sloane Stephens, and those opening games, Sloane looked like, hang on a minute, what is this girl doing?
Yeah.
She this backhand lethal, it took her a couple of games and eventually figured out how to play her. I think Sloane just decided that day she wasn't going to lose to a 14-year-old, and ended up winning the tournament. I think Brenda woke Sloane up that tournament.
Yeah.
Fast forward to 2024, Brenda is really hyped. She's knocking the door with top 100 as a 16-year-old, and actually did break top 100 this year. And I'm like, okay. And I went to go and see her at Wimbledon because I wanted to I saw her play Badosa in, again, actually quite a decent match. And I've got fun memories of that match because I ended up speaking to a couple of fans the other side of me, explaining who Brenda was and why I was here and why I was interested in this match, because I wanted to say, hey, I watched future Grand Slam champion Brenda Kvitova before she was good, guys. Before I got in there early.
Got to get the bragging rights.
Yeah, a little bit, and and she put up a good fight with Paula, and I was cheering her on. Actually, I was giving her because she didn't have many fans. There were a few Spanish people who turned up for Paula, but there weren't that many people cheering for Brenda. And so I thought, I'll just give her let's make this match interesting. Let's give her some encouragement. And she goes off court. I think she was a bit hurt during it as well, which didn't help. I was off court, and I'm like, okay, cool. Brenda was everything, and it was the second round as well, so pretty good. And I just checked. She's played an ITF at the beginning of November, and that's been her only tournament since the US Open. So she's tumbled well out the top 100. She's outside the top 150. And I remember thinking, you know what? Yeah, at multiple words, I haven't heard from Brenda Kvitova in a while. Where is she? What's happened? Maybe as well, expectations of her a little bit coloured by the fact that she's kind of rocket rising up really young. And you're already making comparisons to someone else who did something similar, Mira Andreeva, who is now 17 years old and top 16.
Yeah.
And we don't expect every young player to be Mira Andreeva, but Brenda Kvitova was looking close to that. And so, again, we'll see how it goes. If she's healthy, I think when you're young, you get injured more. So I think that's what we're going to have to deal with. So hopefully Brenda comes back next year, but she's probably the best fit for this award for me.
Yeah. I think it's kind of the thing that happens when you get players, like you said, Mira Andreeva, Carlos Alcaraz, and then now you're looking at every 19-year-old and being like, you're next, but they're still pretty young and sometimes have a ways to go. Okay, so we are coming to the end of this. We have one more question. Well, we kind of have three. We have 3 questions total left. One of them is super fun. Nick, what are you most looking forward to in 2025?
You want the real answer or do you want the sensible answer?
Now I want the real answer. Now I want the real answer.
Okay, putting on my just putting it out there because I am biased. What I'm looking forward to in 2025 is Iga Swiatek getting back to world number 1 and winning everything. Just as a fan of hers and the way she plays tennis, I want that tennis to succeed. And I'm interested in seeing how that coaching partnership with Wim Fissette goes. And I'm looking forward to 2025. I mean, obviously, I'm looking forward to going back to Wimbledon. I guess the thing that's kind of hyping me up a little bit is I am excited about Iga. I'm also excited about Elena Rybakina. I am excited, and this partnership with Goran Ivanisevic and what this might unleash on the WTA Tour and what level of tennis we're going to get and what kind of great matches she could end up playing, kind of encouraged by this other former player who's an excellent server. And I guess, that plays into what I'm excited by. I'm excited by the WTA Tour continuing to be continuing to not only be excellent on a ground pass level, because trust me, I can recommend if I wrote you a Wimbledon guide, I'd be sending you to WTA matches most of the time because you've got so much depth of players and like players with crazy CVs playing each other in the first round, really good CVs. But the top of the game is becoming such a strong level out of it. With Swiatek, Sabalenka, Rybakina, Goff. Let's see what Zheng Qinwen does. We're going to see, like, when we're waiting for Andreeva to join that potentially. So, yeah, I think that's kind of what I'm going to be looking for. Because let's face it, I'm going to be watching tennis most of the time. And it's going to be on a weekend. And I would quite like my finals to be quite good.
Funny enough, Nick, we have very, very similar things we're looking forward to in 2025.
I guess you want to see Carlos Alcaraz taking over as world number one from Jannik Sinner.
No, not at all, actually. This is sort of a podcast episode that I've had just sitting as an idea on our idea sheet on our like little Google Doc that we share. But I'm really interested in coaches and especially tennis coaches and what they bring to the game. So imagine my luck and just excitement with the number of coaching changes and news that we're coming into in this new season. So I am extremely excited to see where everything kind of lands, because I'm also I love an athlete and I love an athlete's journey to being better. I love seeing that growth and that challenge come to life. And it seems like Iga Swiatek, Elena Rybakina, Naomi Osaka have all kind of said, Coco Gauff, you can add Coco Gauff to that, have all sort of switched their teams around and are, wanting to get to some new level. And my excitement cannot be contained. I am so excited for the first tournament that all four players play together in Australia. Is that the Australian Open? Is it a tournament before?
Will be the Australian Open because they're all chosen different tournaments.
Right. Just to see what they spent their offseason doing. Like, I wish I was a fly on the wall, watching them in that process, because that's the favorite process for me. So I'm super excited for that. And we didn't really get much of that on the ATP side until Andy Murray stepped in. And Andy Murray and Novak Djokovic were like, why? We're just going to add, we were feeling left out. The WTA had all the sort of like coaching changes. We were feeling left out. So I called Andy and Andy said, hello, Novak, what's going on? And he's like, I don't know. You want to like coach me for a bit? And he was like, sure. Cannot wait. Please, Netflix gods up there, please make a documentary about this, because I want to be the fly on the wall that's watching that. So yes, that is what I'm looking forward to most in 2025, is to see what these new relationships bring, because I think it's going to be a super exciting year. Okay, final two. We'll start with something more serious, or at least harder. This was really hard. I don't know why, but it took me a really, really long time to pick my person. But we have two more spots.
Because I came up with the restrictions on this.
But then I loved the restrictions. So we are going to pick the Ground Pass WTA Player of the Year and the Ground Pass ATP Player of the Year. But here are the rules. Nick came up with the rules. I love the rules. Ground Pass Player of the Year. A player you can watch in a Ground Pass who is outside. I think I modified this because I think you said outside of the top 32. But here's the reality of it.
I then went back and said, or outside the top 10, but not from these contexts.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. Because I was thinking I don't know how many people can actually name all the top 10, let alone the top 20 or the top 32. So I was going to stick to top 10, but I think you know what? I did think I saw that edit where you were like, it could be in the top 10, but not a Grand Slam champion. I think is what you
the Grand Slam champions ruled it out. And it was also tempted to rule out certain nationalities depending on which Grand Slam you go to, but then or at least nationalities in the top 32. So if you're at Roland Garros, if you went to Wimbledon and there's a Brit who's seeded, you're not going to see them on a ground pass.
This is true. That is exactly. Exactly.
I'm not
Same
going to
thing
see Katie Bolt on a ground pass. I did see Katie Bolt on a ground pass because she was on court 3, but it was really hard to get into that court. It was like the 4th biggest court, like that Murray match at Miami. So that's kind of where I was coming from here. But I appreciate that's kind of arbitrary because it's very location dependent.
Yeah, but I totally get it because, I mean, technically Louis Armstrong is a big court, but every time an American was playing on an outside court that you could get, that there was seating available for ground pass holders, it was impossible to get it, impossible. So, okay. So who I picked as ground pass ATP Player of the Year was Arthur Fils. And you might be thinking, Anastasia, you couldn't pick an American? But guess what? Arthur Fils is the king of New York.
You're going to go into this. Okay, I know you're going to go into this, Anastasia, but can I just say, when I saw Arthur Fils, this was the pick that I knew that you were going to go for, immediately. I knew you were going to go for Arthur Fils. You have been so excited about Arthur all year. So this does not surprise me whatsoever.
Well, I guess you know me then, Nick. But I think, is the epitome of what's new and what's coming in the future years of tennis, I think. He is 20 years old. He's a French player. He's exciting, vibrant. His matches are always fun. I got the King of New York thing because I saw him at the US Open on an outside court. I think it was court 12 or 13, one of the ones that are all mashed up on the side. And he was playing Matteo Rinaldi, which he has a problem with Matteo Rinaldi. He needs to figure out how to play that man because he's lost every match that they've played together. But, the crowd was just going wild and calling him the King of New York. Why? I have no idea. I got to the match halfway through it. So I was why are we calling him the King of New York? But he's embodied that attitude. And I think fans really latch onto him when they see him play on TV or in real life. Some of his runs to titles this year. So he won 2 titles. He won Hamburg and Tokyo. And his Hamburg run was okay. He did have a very, very spicy, I guess you could say, final match against Zverev in Hamburg. But I think his run in Tokyo was the most impressive. Yes, I think he had one in that run. I think he did have one person retire due to injury, but otherwise he was fighting every single match and it always went to a third set. And after every match, I kept saying, how is he going to do this tomorrow? How is he going to do this tomorrow? And he just ended up with the title. I guess I am a little predictable because Nick knew who I was going to pick, but Arthur Fils is my ground pass ATP player of 2024.
Everyone knows he's the King of New York. Please tell us, because was that a first round or a second round match?
It was a second round match.
Must have done something in his first round match that made everyone love him.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was. But again, it was quite remarkable. I came in halfway and everyone was King, you're the King of New York. I was he is? He's French. But anyway,
look, the French sent New York, the Statue of Liberty, and Arthur Fils.
Solved. That's it.
Cool when he wins the US Open, right?
It will be. It's his home tournament,
I'd gone down the same route as Anastasia went with her pick. I would have gone with Deanna Schneider. She's won multiple C50s. She'd be great sight on a ground pass. She's the same age as Arthur Fils. She's a young up-and-coming player. She ticks a lot of boxes. She's the only player in the top 32 that I would have seriously considered going for. But I wanted to kind of do the whole go and see someone on a ground pass kind of thing, and I wanted this award to go to someone who kind of encompasses discovering someone on a ground pass and following them, right? And Schneider is someone we've known about for a couple of years as being incredibly talented, and she's had a big breakthrough this year. But if I go with like most exciting player of the top 20 that you could go watch the Grand Pass, go watch Deanna Schneider right now. Isn't already pretty well established. I had a few options here. I did put it on social media. Hey, who's your top 32? Which you can go back and have a look. And I got some really good input. And a lot of people were saying some of the same people that I was thinking about. Lulu Sun, who broke through at Wimbledon.
Ooh.
Like, imagine if you'd gone to her matches at Wimbledon and then suddenly she's in a quarterfinalist and again, huge power. Really rattled Donna Vekic in the quarters, knocked out Amara Raducanu. Lulu Sun is, and just a couple of things since. There was some people have said Amanda Anisimova. That wasn't someone I thought of, but worth considering. And I really didn't want to go with the obvious choice. I think Anastasia.
So I'm not going to know.
You don't know what the obvious choice is for WTA Player of the Year for Grand Pass? It's only the player who's won Player of the Fortnight more than once, despite the fact there's a rule, which we're supposed to have a rule where that doesn't happen. I call it the Iga Swiatek rule. It's the Carlos Alcaraz rule. It was more for the both of us.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's the only Rebecca Shramkova, who has, and the reason why she has to win isn't because we keep mentioning her.
Yeah, she has to win it. Actually,
in the same way as keep mentioning Artifice.
Yes,
but she broke. If you were a grounds pass at the Italian Open, you would have seen her make that initial breakthrough when she made the last 16.
Mm-hmm.
In the back end of this year, she's reached 3 250 finals. Again, two those kind of tournaments that, like those smaller events that, it's not all about the ground passes for the big events. It's getting into those smaller tournaments that for a similar price to go and watch those in those smaller stadiums. And you would see her there grinding it out and doing really well, winning at 250, went to a Billie Jean King Cup tie, would have seen her slugging out for Slovakia and getting through, and on that, and becoming one of the heroes of the Billie Jean King Cup finals. And there's now a lot of hype around Rebecca Shramkova doing things in 2025, given she's launched herself into the top 50.
Yeah.
And because she's still not seeded, go see her on a ground pass while you can. Because here's the thing, these awards is that we want to highlight players that you can go watch. Like if you're going to a tennis tournament, we want to give you some names of people you'll have heard of, maybe seen pictures of on our social media. So with that in mind, you're in Australia, because she'd probably be seeded by the French if she keeps going like this. Watch the Rebecca Shramkova WTA Player of the Year for the Ground Pass podcast 2024.
The most perfect pick. Again, alumni of Player of the Fortnight. The best pick you've ever made, Nick. Yeah, you nailed it. You nailed it. And she's such... I'm going to find that video again because it's that episode. And I'll link the episode below where you picked her just to highlight your description, because she has had quite the end of the season for sure. Okay, so that's it. I wanted to add this fun question at the end. I'm always curious how many people who actually listen to tennis podcasts, or what else, what other tennis goals do you have? Do you have, let's just jump right into it, I would say. And the question really is, what are your tennis goals? And I know that's so broad, but what are your tennis goals for 2025? And I will start because I came up with this stupid question. It's not stupid. It's fun. It's a fun question. But my tennis goal for 2025 is, there are two. One, play more tennis. I actually do play tennis. I just don't play it enough. And every time I get back on court, I'm like, I forgot how to play tennis. So I want to play more tennis in 2025. So that's my first goal. And my second goal is go to more lower level tournaments, because I live in a Grand Slam city. I live in a city where there's a Grand Slam. And I think that's sort of spoiled me a little bit where, you know, people are like, oh, what's your local tournament? I'm like, it's the US Open. You know, that's a massive, massive event. And I just want to go to more lower level tournaments. I think I was really inspired by going to the Champagne Challenger and just being part of it and watching these young tennis players and old tennis players too. Like there were some established names there trying to make it back. And you just get to see tennis so close up at these smaller events. And it gives me a better appreciation for the game. I've never been someone who's technical per se. Like I'm never going to be someone who's analyzing backhands and forehands and looking at percentages and things like that. But I am finding joy in learning more about that stuff and being able to see a forehand or backhand or where someone's putting their serve in up close like that helps me get more appreciation for it. So I'm hoping to go to more smaller tournaments in 2025. Those are my goals. How about you, Nick?
Pretty much the same. I mean, I play tennis semi-regularly, competitively. I would say my ambitions are similar to yours, but I'm going to focus them a little bit more, kind of be a bit more specific. I want to win a tennis match.
Ooh.
I haven't won a tennis match in 2 years.
Okay. That's a good goal.
Maybe, over a year. And I want to go to one of the following 3 events. I don't know which one yet. I want to either go to the Nottingham Open, Ilkley Challenger, or the ITF in Shrewsbury. That's because they're all within an hour of where I live.
Those are...
Never been.
Again, 2025 will be the year of the smaller tournament on Ground Pass. Get ready, everyone. We're going small, or going big, but going small, but going big by going small. Anyway, we've reached the part of the podcast where Anastasia is going crazy. So it's time to wrap it up.
Enjoy the fact that Anastasia goes crazy. Please like on social media, be it Blue Sky or Threads or Instagram. I don't know if we still have an X account or not. But you can see all sorts of Anastasia's crazy ramblings on there, whether she puts up a video of it or whether she decides to just post whatever she's thinking about tennis, which is usually how it kind of transpires. And you can enjoy that a lot more with us. Obviously, subscribe to us if it's your first episode. And what an introduction to Ground Pass it is. We talk a lot.
I know. Can you imagine if this is someone's first episode?
Look, I've had crazier first episodes of podcasts. We're actually relatively sensible in this one, would you believe? Yeah, subscribe to our podcast feeds. We'll try and get some content for you for the off season. We're getting ready to go join the tennis world in a brief hibernation period before we re-emerge blinking in the Australian sun. Everyone for listening in 2024. I'm so happy that our Ground Pass family's grown so much this year. And shout out to all of you on Threads and Blue Sky who found us. And looking forward to hearing more about your experiences of going to tournaments and discovering players, as well as sharing ours.
Couldn't have said it better, Nick. Bye, everyone. And now it's your turn. So, what was your favorite tournament to attend in person this year? Or what was your favorite match to watch on TV? Who was your favorite new discovery? I'm going to create a little form that you can fill out. I'll put it it's going to look like this. I think it's going to look like this. I will put a link to the form in the description of this podcast. I will also post it to our social media so you can take a screenshot, you can download it, fill it out, and then post it. Let us know. Send it back to us, tag us on Instagram, and we'll repost it and share it. It will be fun to really see everyone else's picks. It's been a great year. Thank you for being with us here on Ground Pass. And can't wait to see your picks.